I'm thinking about President Barack Obama's 8 years and all the opportunities he had to set the record straight about racism in America, and it didn't do it. He was the beneficiary of the marching and the picketing and often the dying that the so-called Moses generation undertook to create the conditions so that somebody like that could become president. And instead of doing what Nelson Mandela did, this is a man, Mandela, who was in prison for 27 years, beaten, comes out, becomes president of the country, and forms a multi-ethnic government. Did not decree that land should be taken away from white farmers. You saw the movie Invictus starring Matt Damon, Morgan Freeman, putting together this integrated sports team that brought the country together. He was criticized for being too magnanimous, too forgiving to his former tormentors. And Mandela said something to the effect of, when you expect more of people, morally and spiritually, you'll be surprised at how often they rise to the occasion. Robert E. Lee, the Confederate general, leader of the Confederate Army, loses, surrenders, and then opposes the construction of not only Confederate monuments but Union monuments because he argues that this war was disastrous. We need to move on. We don't need any memorials to the vanquished. We don't need memorials to the victors. We need to unite the country. It's one of the reasons he's so well respected right now. Barack Obama could have done something very similar. He got a higher percentage of the white vote than John Kerry. Any way you slice it, his race gave him an advantage. By the time he walked into office, his popularity, his approval ratings had hit almost 70%. Now, he didn't win with 70%, did he? Of course not. But because he got elected, after he got elected, so many Americans said, okay, I didn't vote for the guy, but at least this institutional, systemic, structural, foundational racism BS can finally be put to rest. Because after all, this is a guy who on 60 Minutes told Steve Kroft, when asked as a candidate, will race prevent you from getting the nomination and winning? He said, no. If I don't win this race, it will be because I have not articulated a vision that the American people can embrace. That's what he said to Steve Kroft in 2008 when he's running. That's the man America thought they had hired to be president. The guy who in Boston in 2004 said, there's no red America, there's no blue America, there's only one United States of America, we're all one. That's the man that America thought they'd hire for presidency. What happens? The Cambridge police acted stupidly, when in fact they didn't. They acted, to pardon the President Trump's word, perfectly. And he knew that was a bonehead thing for him to say. That's why he did that stupid beer summit. But then he did it again and again and again. If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. What does that even mean? There's a little place in Ferguson. So yes, he said to the world when he gave an address to the United Nations, so yes, we have our own problems too. Ferguson was a lie. The man did not have his hands up, did not say don't shoot, was charging towards the officer. Michael Brown's DNA found on the officer's gun, for crying out loud. But Obama uses that to tell the world that America still has its own racial problems too. Nirvana is not an option. Never has been. There are 28 million Americans who believe there is a chance that Elvis is still alive. Hello? What about Obama's life suggests to him that racism is a problem? What? Great education, all private. Punahou, best private school in the state of Hawaii. Ivy League education. Sends his girls to Sidwell Friends, the Quaker school that Chelsea went to that cost 40, 45 grand a year. When the Obamas were interviewed in 60 Minutes before he became president, Steve Kroft asked Michelle Obama, "Do you fear for his safety?" Meaning, as a first black president candidate, serious candidate, do you think that he might be at risk? Remember what she said? She said, as a black man, he could be killed at the gas station. Kroft did not ask a follow-up question. He should have. By whom? By the Aryan brothers? By white nationalists? By Klan members? Or by the black criminal in the neighborhood? She wasn't asked that. But I'm sure that's what she meant. Isn't that a problem? Cambridge police acted stupidly. By the son, he looked like Trayvon. Racism is in America's DNA. We're not over that. Racism is in America's DNA, meaning America can't change. So in the 50s and the 60s, when whites were asked, would you vote for a black person for president, no matter how well qualified, and they said no, how could you have gotten elected president if racism is in our DNA and DNA is unchangeable? He knows it's BS. And I bet you he feels conflicted about that from time to time. He has to know it's undermining the country. He knows about the value of education, which is why his mom sent him from Indonesia back to Hawaii to live with his white grandparents. He knows that, which is why Sasha and Malia were educated at an elementary school that was connected to the University of Chicago private school, which is why he didn't put him in public schools when he moved to D.C. He knows damn well how important education is, which is why his wife agreed to get on a bus and go to a far-away high school rather than the local high school because she knew that that school was inferior and her parents wanted her to go to a better school. It wasn't called a magnet school, but that's the term that later on we use for these kind of special schools that provide better opportunities. That's where she went, to avoid her local school. So you tell me where she has been affected by racism. Where has Obama been affected by racism? Hell, they met at one of the blue stocking law firms in Chicago, Sidley and Austin. She was his boss. Where have they been negatively affected by racism? Talk to me. Racism in America's DNA. We've not overcome it. It doesn't go overnight. What are you talking about? You are a walking demonstration of how fair this country is. And instead of saying that, you peddled victimhood.